If you own an Arcade1Up Simpsons game cabinet, here are 4 easy modifications you can do to dress it up a bit. These include a new vinyl bezel, LEDs for the coin door buttons, a vinyl riser decal, and a 4-inch riser extender to make viewing the screen much better for adults over 5'10". I purchased the bezel, decal, and lights from LoudGraphX on Etsy.com. The riser extender comes from BuyStuffArcades.com. Other than the riser extender, you'll need to disassemble your cabinet at least in part to make these modifications. However, if you're starting with a brand new Simpsons game straight out of the box like I was, it's very easy to do the modifications as you build the machine. I started the project by adding the LED light kit to illuminate the buttons on the 2 coin doors that come on this cabinet. The LoudGraphX kit includes a pre-assembled LED light strip and a splitter cable, plus a detailed instruction sheet. To begin, I removed the coin doors from the front panel of the arcade. I then removed the screws that hold the 4 light buttons in place. The buttons come from the factory with a self-adhesive piece of paper inside each. The paper needs to be removed in order to light the clear plastic piece. I used a chisel blade and an X-Acto knife to pry up one edge of the paper, and then I used a pair of tweezers to remove it. With the buttons removed, I placed the coin doors back into their mounting holes on the panel and marked the button openings. I used a 1-inch Forstner bit to drill the holes. Because these panels are made from MDF, I started the hole on one side, then flipped the panel over to finish drilling from the back, using the drill point hole to center the bit. This avoids tearing one side of the MDF when the bit passes through it. In hindsight, I didn't need holes that big, and I'll use a 1/2-inch bit when doing the same modification to my X-Men cabinet later on. I then reassembled the coin door buttons and mounted the coin doors to the panel using the supplied hardware from Arcade1Up. The LED light strip has far more LEDs on it than you'll need, but it's an easy way to go about the project. Following the instructions, I lined up the first LED on the strip nearest the splitter plug with the first button hole. I used duct tape to secure the LED centered over the hole. I repeated the process for the other 3. To keep the strip from sagging or pulling away from the panel, I used clear packing tape to seal it tight. When you install the panel back in the arcade, the splitter plugs into the marquee light port, and then the marquee cable plugs into the splitter. The plugs come clearly labeled. Be sure to attach all the cables to the side of the cabinet with tape. Next, I applied the new vinyl bezel. This attaches directly to the front of the plexiglass that covers the game screen on the cabinet. First, I removed the 10 screws that hold the plexiglass in place over the screen assembly. Then I peeled away the protective plastic. I wiped both sides of the plexiglass with a microfiber cloth to clean it, and then set it aside. LoudGraphX has a great video showing the installation process from start to finish for the bezel, and I watched it before attempting mine. The new bezel is printed on self-adhesive vinyl, and it needs to be cut from the sheet before installing it. I used a metal square as a straight edge and trimmed the bezel with a sharp X-Acto knife. To install the bezel, I started by peeling away about 1.5 inches of the backer from the top edge. I then cut off approximately 1 inch of the backer paper to leave the adhesive side of the vinyl exposed. Next, I carefully lined up the top edge of the vinyl to the top edge of the plexiglass, and I tacked it in place with my fingertips. When I was sure that the edge was straight, I then pressed the vinyl to the plexiglass with a clean microfiber cloth to seat it. I next laid the vinyl backwards to expose the backer and peeled away another inch or so of the material. I then carefully laid the bezel back in place and worked it into the plexiglass slowly using the microfiber cloth as shown. What's great is that this action automatically causes the backer paper to separate from the vinyl, and so you'll never expose more adhesive than you actually need. At the bottom of the bezel, I repeated the process of peeling back the top edge of the backer by 1 inch or so I could seat the bottom of the bezel properly with the bottom edge of the screen. I then used the microfiber cloth to finish the installation. I used my X-Acto knife to trim away any hanging vinyl, and I also cut out the screw holes. After a last check to make sure the bezel was bubble-free, I reinstalled it on the screen and then assembled the game cabinet. This was the one modification I was most concerned with, but by following the instructional video, I was amazed that I got it right on the first try, and it actually proved to be pretty easy. Next, I applied the vinyl riser decal. It's slightly bigger than the riser's front panel, so you actually have some wiggle room here. After peeling away 1.5 inches of the backer from the bottom of the decal, I applied it along the bottom of the riser panel, making sure the crusty graphic was centered on the piece. I then applied the rest of the decal on the panel using the same microfiber cloth technique as I had used on the bezel. Once the vinyl was in place, I flipped the riser front over and trimmed away the excess material. I removed the foot pegs from the bottom before cutting that piece. The pegs slipped back into their holes with just a gentle tap of a hammer. I then turned it back over and cleared the screw holes with my X-Acto knife. From there, I assembled the base following the normal Arcade1Up instructions, and I have to say, Krusty adds a lot to this cabinet. The final modification I made to the Simpsons machine was to install the riser booster. Being 6 feet tall, the booster makes it a lot easier for me to see the top of the game screen without putting stress on my lower back. BuyStuffArcades.com makes boosters in 4 and 6-inch heights for Arcade1Up machines, and I have them on all of my 3/4 size cabinets. The riser comes in 4 pieces and it has its plastic feet already installed. It also includes the screws and an instruction sheet, and there's a BuyStuffArcades.com decal if you care to install it. The holes are drilled for you, so you really just need a screwdriver to assemble the riser. When complete, it has 4 posts that allow a standard Arcade1Up riser to slide right over the top. It might be a bit of a tight fit, but that's okay because you don't want the riser to fall off when you're moving the arcade. I'm really happy with how my Simpsons cabinet turned out. The added vinyl decals and the lighted coin door buttons really make it stand out in my home arcade. And that extra 4 inches of height make it enjoyable to play for long periods of time. These are easy modifications to make. And basically, if you built your cabinet straight from the box, you should be able to do any or all of these things to get the same great results I did. You can find these and more great products from LoudGraphX on Etsy.com. And for more riser boosters and other arcade odds and ends, check out BuyStuffArcades.com.